G'day everyone. Today I'm just going to show you how to set up Traktor to, I guess, emulate what you'd expect on a Pioneer CDJ unit or any other sort of CD multimedia player of that sort of range, Stanton, Reloop, Gemini, etc., what have you. The basic principle stays the same. And so yeah, today I'm going to be doing the Pioneer 8 CDJ 850. As I just said, the principle goes across all sort of multimedia units apart from the 2000 Nexus, which pretty much looks like Traktor anyway. Okay, so what we have here is pretty much the finished product. We've got the two track decks. You can have four. It's entirely up to you. It doesn't really matter. Unfortunately, you can't really get rid of this control stripe here, but it doesn't really matter too much, though it does take up about 30 pixels of real estate there, so it can be a bit annoying. Okay, so what we have in the title bar here is just the track title, time remaining, and BPM. And if you look at the CDJ, sort of what we have here, the track title there, the time remaining, and the BPM. Now we can display more of the sort of meta information, however, it sort of gives it away and we have a scrolling wavelength instead of just a static. Now personally I prefer this large one just because my eyes aren't too great, but if you want to fully emulate what it's like on a CDJ, you can actually make this wavelength even smaller. Okay, so let's get to it. To get started, what we're going to do, go straight into your preferences by clicking that little button there. Go to Layout Manager, and we're just going to create a new layout based on the Essential, which is that one, which has everything there. We'll go Add Base Off Essential 4 deck. Now you can either have 4 deck or 2 deck. It really makes no difference to the workflow or anything like that. But for the purpose of this video, I'll just do 2 deck. So we made our duplicate. Now we'll rename this to Pioneer CDJ. I'll just put a 2 next to it. Okay. So now let's start working on getting it to emulate the CDJs. So first start off at loading. So this doesn't really look like it will do that much, but it sort of has some behind the scenes things just when it comes to track loading and auto queuing and things like that. So technically you should have that unticked, but with a controller you can tend to mix up the buttons like load A, load B. So I personally prefer to have that on, but to fully emulate it you'd probably want to have it off. Stop playback at the end of the track should be on, as that's what happens. Load next at the end of track. Now that pretty much comes to what it's like for the if you have auto queue on, it won't continuously play the track. It will just load the next one and load to the next queue point. Okay, so I skipped this one. Duplicate track when loading same. Duplicate deck when loading same track. Leave that off, and leave these 2 off. Definitely here, reset all deck and mixer controls when loading track. Definitely have those off, especially if you're using a controller, because it really messes with the positioning. Probably the only good time you'd use this is if you were just using keyboard and mouse or something. Okay, so now to transport. The tempo range here is something that you can change, but you have to do a mapping for the button to change it. Otherwise, you can just put in the desired value you like. The Pioneer units from memory, I think, is 6%. Let's see here. I think it's 6%, 10%, and 12% off the top of my head. So whatever ones that you personally like, I personally like 6. You can go ahead and put them in. Tempo band, you leave that. Tempo or window. Not really using sync, so we don't need to touch any of this. For keylock and that such, just leave that. It should be on high quality and scratch, so that will just be like your not vinyl mode. If you want the CDJ mode, then you go normal. But pretty much everybody uses vinyl, I think. Skip all these. Don't need any of this. So yep. Now decks layout. This is where you actually see what happens. So we're gonna leave A and B as track decks. If you're gonna do C and D, also do them as track decks. But for the purpose, as I said, we're not gonna do C and D. So either tick or untick that, doesn't matter. Okay, so now we can do either micro, which is really, really small. I personally find it a bit too hard to see. But yeah, personally I do small. Depends how good your eyes are. Do that for the same thing on C and D if you're using them. So deactivate them for the tempo fader because you've got that, assuming that you've got a controller. Grid mode, well, we don't have grids on the heads-up display on the CDJs, so deactivate them. Show minute markers, again, we don't have that, so deactivate them. Color mode, you can do anything, but for the, I guess if you fully want to get into the spirit of it, do X-ray because it has the black and white. Now, you don't need to, but I personally like having cover art off, and definitely show the phase marker off because that helps you beat match without actually listening, just sort of visual thing. Okay, so now we'll go to track decks. Just make sure the meta information is title, remaining time, and BPM. Oops, BPM. You can change them. 30-second track warning. That's, I think, the standard on the CDJs. Play market position doesn't really matter because we've got the micro decks. Stripe view doesn't matter again, and default zoom again doesn't matter because we're using the micro decks. Remix decks we're not using. Mixer, just make sure that none of this stuff is shown because we're not using it. Yeah, that's all good. Global settings. Now you can either have this on or off. If you want to have them, if you want to see what your effects are. Personally, I set all my effects on my controller before I start playing. With the chained effects, you can have 6 effects, so I've just memorized what they are, as well as got key bindings for record. If you're using the MIDI clock, then you might need it. But yeah, otherwise I suggest that you have it off. And I think that is pretty much it because we're not touching effects, mix recorder, loop recorder, broadcasting, browser. Yeah, that's pretty much what all the preferences you want for your browser, which really doesn't matter when you're trying to simulate the CDJs. And yeah, so then that brings us back to the layout manager. Simply, if you haven't named it, just click on the layout here. Click on the change name box and type in what you want it to call. And that's it. So let's have a look. So yeah, we can't get rid of list bar here or list bar here, which sort of sucks, as again we don't need them when we're trying to simulate CDJs. But other than that, that's pretty much what we got. So if you're having trouble with things like turning on and off the sort of auto cue things and the tempo percent, things like that. If you're having trouble doing key bindings or mappings for that, then just comment and let me know and I'll do another video to demonstrate. But yeah, this should pretty much get you rolling on a controller and really sort of test you when you're at home, just to make sure that what you're taking to the club or bar or wherever you play, you're still sort of working in the same workflow and you're not using aids that you have here on at home that you won't have when you're out. Just one last thing. When it comes to this, I found when I was doing this that I was having a bit of problem with latency. Now at the moment I'm just on my desktop, which I don't really use this for DJing. But as you see here, my overall latency is 20 ms. If you're repetitively tapping the Q button and trying to beat sync, then 20 ms will be a bit too high latency for you, and you'll find that very rarely you'll hit it on time. So ideally, you should have that around between like 4 to 7 ms. That will make sure it's relatively snappy. I think with most drivers it should be 5.6 or 5.7 ms. So yeah, just make sure you have that. Otherwise, it just won't feel right. You won't be able to get things on time, and it'll just be really frustrating. So yeah, other than that, thanks for watching. Any questions, just let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. All right, ciao.